people at the Community Foundation. I'll talk to you a little bit about what we do, but I'm just the kind of external partnership person. So I guess we can go ahead and start, because the presentation kind of walks us through why we did it, who we are, why we did it, and what we found out in this report and how it's available to the public. So yeah, let's go ahead and start, Lori. So I'm presenting today on the Northern Colorado Intersections Report. This is a report around pursuing regional well-being. My boss, Kristen Todd, came here a couple years ago from Denver, and she was interested in the role the foundation serves as a neutral convener, and how do we choose topics to convene on, and when do we convene on groups or convene groups to talk about community issues. And so we thought we should do some research and find the data. What does the data show us? And then what should we do next with the data? So at the end of this, I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do with the data, with the stories, and how we're going to help keep improving the community through the foundation and other partners. So we go to the next slide. So the Community Foundation overview, we are a confluence of ideas, impact, and solution. Basically, we inspire philanthropy by connecting generous donors with community needs. So a big part of our job is working with 500 individuals and businesses every year and learning about their philanthropic passions. What are they caring about these days? What is meaningful to them? And then we help them with, we're the boots on the ground too, our team. So we understand a lot of the community issues. We meet with nonprofits all the time. We host meetings on everything from water resiliency in Northern Colorado to regional governance and local government, down to housing initiatives. So our philanthropists that have funds with us at the foundation rely on us to know what's happening so they can make the right investment with their philanthropic dollars. We are also, oh, we can go back one more. Sorry, that was just one bullet point. Back. We're going to talk quickly about this champion of regional collaboration. Like I was mentioning, the Intersections Initiative is really the umbrella of which we do that work. And then our third role in the community is to increase nonprofits' capacity, because this will really strengthen the community, right? If we help nonprofits with grant funding, with access to loans, below market interest rate loans, trainings, matching programs with funding so that they can, leverage some money. We feel like that helps strengthen the community, and it helps our donors know that we have a healthy ecosystem of nonprofits when we're also at the table helping support them. Okay, we can advance. This next slide talks about the Intersections Report, and I don't know if you guys know Melanie Woolman, but she's the president and CEO of United Way of Weld County, where Felicia's husband Lyle works. So it's a small world here in Northern Colorado. Yeah, and there's Lyle. On cue. Thanks, Lyle. That was good. That was good timing. You can move my stuff too. So this inaugural report features data and sample lived experience. So we searched high and low for a report. We really didn't want to do this. You know how when you have an idea, you're like, let's go see who did that. Well, we couldn't find anything. So we're like, well, gosh darn it all, we're going to have to do it. So we got some donors together and some money, and we went out and we really wanted to find out, how do our systems and sectors overlap and intersect? How are the challenges and opportunities of a growing community impacting systems and sectors? And then how can we ensure a quality of life or well-being for our region? And then what can philanthropists, business owners, local government, education systems, and nonprofits do and invest in to help that well-being? There's something I was going to mention about that. So I guess maybe the next slide talks about, we can advance, Lori. Yeah, so Northern Colorado is a special place, right? And the state demographer is saying from 2015 to 2045, we are going to see a 92% increase in population. We are 9 years into this, friends, already. So if you feel like there's a lot of people on the road, if you feel like there's traffic and more people at restaurants and parks, you are right. There are a lot more people here. And this is Weld and Larimer County. Many of you live here in Fort Collins area, Larimer County, but some of you probably live in Weld County, right? And who lives in Weld County? Yeah, so a handful of people. Many of us go back and forth, and we'll talk about that in the later slide, how much mobility is happening between the two counties and how connected we are with schools, childcare centers, jobs, housing, work, errands, doctor appointments. So the growth is really not bad or good. It's our reality, right? It's a double-edged sword there. So we're beginning to face pressures of this growth, right? And we're 9 years into this demographic prediction. So we feel like we still have time to learn from it and put some things in place. So in those 30 years, we can look back and say, okay, good thing we did that then, or wow, probably should have done this more earlier. So we're already seeing that with the lack of affordable housing, the availability of water, and access to quality childcare and healthcare. So we really want to work together as partners to help our future have well-being. Okay, next slide. So this report, we worked with CSU, two different departments to find the data because Kristen and I are not data experts. I will not pretend to be a subject matter expert on many of the things that we're going to hear about today. And we are definitely not data experts. So we turned to CSU's Institute for the Built Environment and the Institute for Research in Social Sciences. And they worked with 3 different public meetings that we had with different Weld and Larimer County leaders. And Lyle, thank you for your participation in those. And we learned what was important to those leaders. Many of them were nonprofit leaders, local government, healthcare executives, business leaders, and so on, higher education. And they created a framework that highlights this interconnectedness of the region. And the focus is on these key intersections. There's 6 of them we'll talk about. And then it's focused on regenerative community development. And I'll tell you a secret, that was going to be the name of the report, regenerative community development. We thought, no, thank you. We are going to not use that because no one knows what that means. So hence intersections was forward. But we also wanted more than just data, right? I mean, data is exciting. And we love a data dashboard, but it's people's experience with the intersections that really is pulls at your heartstring, and it tells the story quickly, and it's something relatable. So next slide, we're going to talk about this the other part of the framework, the mirror to that is well-being. So if we're going to look at 6 intersections, we should probably see what is our guide. How do we know when we're achieving well-being? And it's well-being as an individual and a region. We all can, we would love for all of us to have healthy mental health, but there's lots of stresses of daily life. So either individuals suffer with that and, have to work through it, or communities do when there's a large event like our fires in 2020. I mean, and COVID, double whammy, who wasn't low some days during those times? Physical well-being, financial, then we've got work, community, much like the work that we do here at St. Paul's, the community and social relationships are really important to well-being, and you need that in your life. So we can move forward. Lori, thanks. So we're just going to start diving into the intersections. The first one is nourishing. And this was something that the researchers found had a lot of that intersectionality. That's all about things that provide healthy growth and development. And I don't need to read every one of them, but highlights of those are agriculture, energy, water, and food. But a lot of challenges of people moving here into these area have really affected these sectors more. The next slide shows some data on that. I'm not sure if you guys know, but nearly 30% of the state's agriculture production is from northern Colorado. So 30% of all state agriculture is here. And I don't think it's an understatement to say Weld County in particular feeds America. It's one of the most highest agricultural counties in the country. And when we talk about the intersection of we need more housing and, oh, Weld County has land, well, that land is actually producing food that we access locally and nationally. And is that a risk and a compromise you want to take to carve off some agriculture land for housing? That's an intersection at play there, if you will. And yet land is decreasing, right? We were just talking about that. Larimer County has lost 2.8% of its land, and Weld 3.5% of its land from 2007 to 2017. So in every 10 years, if we're losing almost 5% of our land, that can impact the intersection of food production. Oh,
just at Weld County's top 10 for food.
That's right.
Energy production
every year. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. We're very lucky to have wonderful soil and underground natural resources that help everybody exist. Yeah, so next one is about some food stats. The left side of this is talking about the success that we're having with free meals for students. There's a lot of money right now to help children have food security at school and to take home maybe a bag of non-perishable food for the weekend. And that is going well. It's well funded, it's doing well. And we know with kids, if they're fed well and nourished, they do better in school. They have more, there's stats out there that talk about children's behavior and academic achievement, which, academic achievement decreases, behavior issues increase when they're not nourished. So we want to put money there, right? Well, on the other side of that, we are not funding adult food security as well. So 9% of Larimer County residents are food insecure, and 8.7% of Weld County folks are insecure. And so we have some work to do there in the community to make sure people, aren't worried about the stigma of food insecurity and make food banks and food pantries more accessible. I've heard of stories of food pantries being put in churches, in doctors' offices. We have one out here. Yeah. See, that helps reduce stigma and it increases the dignity of your clientele. It's wonderful. Next slide. The next intersection we'll talk about is sheltering and caring. And this is probably near and dear to y'all's heart because it's about places of protection and housing, yes, but also how vulnerable populations are being treated in the community, in the region. And one thing that we see in data over and over is that when we can support the lowest person that's having the least amount of access to service and has the most barrier to services and resources, the better off for our community. It really is about lifting that section of our communities that are facing poverty and access to services and all of the things that we try as church groups and community groups to help. So we can go to the next slide. Here's some stats. They're really small, so I apologize, but I'll tell you at the end how you can read this report online. But we talk about the cost burdenness of housing, and renters especially are feeling this. Do you guys know what cost burden means in housing? When you're cost burdened, that means if you have a salary or a stable income, you should only be spending 30% of that on your housing. If you're spending more than 30% on your housing, that means you have cost burdenness there. So we want to help with that, and that's where there's programs to help people. We also see that talking about homelessness and people experiencing homelessness, we have about 822 individuals. That was a number that was created or taken in on one moment in time. I can't talk. Lyle, help me. What is it called? The point in time count that happens every January. And this is from January 2023. So at that time, at that date, there were 822 people across our two counties. Now that's very flexible. It fluctuates, and it's higher, it's lower, depending on who's being housed in service. Greeley and Evans is seeing a large amount, about 30% of that is taking place in Greeley and Evans, then Loveland, and then Fort Collins. Actually, this was how to increase housing, so I'm sorry. Greeley and Evans is ahead of the game. They're increasing their amount of housing for folks. Loveland is next, and then Fort Collins. And then I think we can move on to the next slide. The aging population, this is a really interesting stat. When I look through all this data, this is one of the biggest ahas for me. We are aging and we're staying alive longer because it's beautiful here. We have access to great healthcare and mountains and trails, and we're living longer, which puts a burden, and it's an intersection of care. Do we have enough caregivers that are ready to help take care of the aging population? Or do we have enough housing available that's for folks that can age in place? I don't know if you've heard that term, aging in place, really important work. So that's something the data is showing us as well. In Larimer County's age, as the school districts have less younger families coming in, that shifts and turns over what kind of healthcare you need in facilities. The next stat is about how expensive our premiums have been, and really how much we need healthcare workers. There's a $54,000 healthcare shortage in Colorado right now. So that's why, I don't know if you've heard, but Front Range Community College has a new nursing program that fast tracks RNs and CNAs and LPNs. And then UNC has just started an OD program there. So Doctor Track, their first doctorate program for physicians in Northern Colorado outside of Boulder and Denver. So that's going to be exciting that we can produce our doctors and they'll stay here hopefully. And then childcare. I can't leave this slide without talking about childcare. when you grow up and you go to college, you're like, yeah, I have student loans, and then you have a mortgage, but then you want to have kids, right? You want to have a family, and all of a sudden you have childcare bills. They cost as much as a mortgage anymore. If you have a child and full-time care, it's $1,200 a month. So not only are families facing increased housing affordability, increased healthcare premiums, they also have increased childcare costs. And what that does is it reduces the amount these young families can put away for their retirement, for anything luxury, any vacation, any enrichment activities. Those are at the bottom of the list because they have to pay for their essential things, which are housing and food and childcare. So it's a real tough thing that families struggle with. Next slide. We'll talk about transacting. So this is the intersection, and I don't know if you know, I love this area. This is downtown Estes Park. Well, it's just not downtown, it's so cute. But this is all around the formation, information, and fulfilling particular needs, desires, and objectives in the economy, jobs, workforce. We can move to the next slide. And here's some stats about the types of businesses that we have, the number of businesses. We do have the data shows the region is experiencing a severe shortage of available employees in sectors such as healthcare. We just talked about that, construction, two of the largest employers in northern Colorado, and we have a shortage in those. So our healthcare system is seeing a shortage, and our construction, we want to have affordable housing. Labor is one of the big indicators of how expensive or not expensive is housing. If you have access to labor, the cost can come down. But if you're fighting over crews and contractors, it's going to drive the cost of housing up. We can go to the next slide. And this is a really interesting stat to me. We were talking earlier about who's in Weld and who's in Larimer County. 40% or more of folks are going back and forth over I-25 every day for those appointments, for work, for kids, for your housing, wherever you live. And the average commute time has gone up. I think about 10 years ago, it was 22 minutes per person, and now it's almost a half an hour. Have you heard the expression drive till you qualify? You heard that? Like, people keep driving east or south or north even till they can qualify for a mortgage or rent. Oh. So drive till you qualify. And yeah, so it's a big part of transacting, and businesses are looking at this. This is not falling on deaf ears. Businesses are now looking at, okay, Wellington, we were talking to Barbara earlier, she's in Wellington. Folks that live in Severance and Evans, the more those neighborhoods are established, major employers are looking at that, and they're like, how do we expand and put a job site there, because people are living there now, and maybe we could capture some of those residents as our employees, because I think in the end, nobody wants to commute, right? Everybody wants to live closer to their jobs till you have more time for your things that you really want to do outside of work. So companies, I was just at a Loveland Economic Council meeting, they were talking about that very thing, that larger companies are looking at smaller areas to put workforce. And I think Amazon is an example of that. They're expanding in Loveland because a lot of the Denver metro area folks, they're living more in Firestone now, Erie, north of that even. And so Amazon can draw from that employment pool, taking folks away from the Denver market because they're kind of in between now. Next slide is beautifying. So this is really about the intersection of how the beautification of our world improves all of our well-being by making us happier and more fulfilled. Like, just going outside and having the ceremony for the garden blessing, like that's going to be a beautiful space of food or flowers, I'm not sure what, but that is beautifying the space, and it'll help us all feel better. We can go to the next slide for some stats on that. The first stat is under beautifying. It doesn't sound like it makes sense, but we are diversifying. We are having more folks come here that maybe don't look like us or want from our ancestral place of being. And that is wonderful because it's diversifying our cultural opportunities as well. Dias de las Muertas, like that was never a thing 10 years ago. And now every community celebrates that, or Cinco de Mayo. I mean, all these different wonderful things that we can celebrate together in a new way. So that's changing our region, and we will continue to see that. Then we talk about conservation, and this photo is from the Big Thompson Canyon after the East Troublesome Fire in 2020, and the regrowth that's starting to happen. That picture was taken in 2022. So we can start going back up to the foothills and the mountains, and we have lots of nonprofits working in the conservation space to make a healthier forest for next time, and to plant things that will latch into the soil quickly and prevent erosion, which prevents flooding down the road. And then there's some conversation or a stat there about 75% of Coloradoans support increasing the funding into conservation. So that's a big indicator that that's an important value here. And we need to keep looking at that as a region. Next slide. For the love of art. So businesses are showing up, Coloradoans are showing up in sponsoring programs, attending programs, art exhibits are up, attendance at live museums is up. And this is really interesting. When we were collecting the data on this, we started in 2020, right after COVID. And so we're excited to do this report again in like 3 years to start seeing what has moved the needle. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think we're going to see different numbers in this area in 3 years because of the access to things has reopened and people are feeling more comfortable, or maybe our immunity's up, all the things that make it easier for us to be out in public. And then we talk about the benefits of music, that there's lots of data out there. These are just snapshots. There's more in the report about access to music and arts in school definitely increases achievement in math, reading, and cognitive development. So often our cultures focus on reading and math and cognitive development, but we miss that if we cut specials or the kind of the enrichment activities, we're going to see a decrease in those. It's not going to, just because we spend more time with those subject matters doesn't mean it's going to stick and people will be smarter. Like, we need the whole package. Next slide. Okay, so we're down to our last two intersections. Connecting is the process of sharing a common experience or bond with others. We find that education is this, mental health, and social well-being. So we can go to the next slide, Lori. This is a big busy slide, so I'm just going to pick a couple to talk about. I will say that our stats are showing suicide and substance use are up in our region, or in our state actually, but there are some points of goodness in there. Like, we are seeing a decrease in suicide locally in our local area, but overall in the state is increasing. So we need to monitor that and keep putting funds and attention into that work. We're looking also on the far right, that column that says 3rd grade reading literacy. This is a really important indicator to a community's well-being. I read a report a few years ago that if you want to know how many jails you need, look at the 3rd grade reading scores, because in about 10 or 15 years, you might need more jails. That people that can't learn to read the mechanics of reading by 3rd grade won't understand the heavy content that kids need to read in 4th, 5th, 6th, higher. And there are many schools now that are facing a backlash on holding kids back, and they don't hold kids back when they can't read, they keep moving them up. And it's this terrible thing that we're seeing across counties and across the state and country, that if we can't get a handle on reading literacy skills by 3rd grade, we have a harder time helping kids learn those mechanics when they get older. There's stigma and dignity at stake there. They feel less successful, their confidence plummets, they drop out of school. Not all of them, we catch some right in tutoring programs as teachers and parents, but it's a real big indicator, and that's why we measure it.
This was the one statistic that shocked me.
Yeah, so if you look, I'll look at Poudre School District, 51% of 3rd graders are reading at the 3rd grade level, and that's one of the highest. In Greeley, we're seeing almost 30% of kids can't read at 3rd grade. But Eaton is seeing some success. The Eaton School District, 52% of the 3rd graders can read at 3rd grade reading. So the idea that I'll talk about soon is, like, how do we know what moves the needle? What are they doing? How do we replicate that? How do we do that in other places? So this is a little preview of what we're going to do next. Next slide, Lori. This is connectiveness in regard to recreation and tourism. And as many of you know, it's a great place to live here, the mountains and all that, but our recreation systems are really thriving. Our trail systems are thriving. It helps people. It helps bring in revenue. It helps create jobs. So there's some stats about the economics part of tourism and that, and it's really interesting. I encourage you to read that in the report. The next slide, I think, moves us into the last intersection with renewing. We talked a little bit about how the researchers thought we should call this the regenerative community report. And it's like, no, but we do have an intersection of that. Like, when we do renew things, when we, make our old town centers nicer, when we rejuvenate buildings for historic value, we provide that basis of like roots, right? And we become embedded in the community even deeper. So this also has to do with civic things like civic government and community engagement and showing up and caring for your community so much that you go to a council meeting or you write to your local officials. It means you want better for the next generation and you're invested in that. And then one thing that we love at the foundation is about philanthropy and how donors are a big part of renewing because they're showing faith and trust that the work can get done at the nonprofit level and build everyone up. So we can go to the next slide, Lori. So here's some stats. Place building is another part of renewing, which happens when the boundaries of each of our city and towns. And we want to look at our boundaries as they're fluid. We go between them, but we also want some unique identities and pride too, right? We talk about election turnout being a data point that contributes to renewing stats and what are the indicators that we're doing well in the community. The higher voter turnout, the more engaged and safer and happier citizens are actually. When you have low voter turnout, you probably have some unrest, you probably have division among your community, controversy. So we have some pretty good stats, over 50% in Weld County and over 70% of Larimer County residents voted. So keep those stats up. So kudos to whoever helps with that in this room. And then neighborly love. We talk about volunteerism, we talk about philanthropy and these other stats, and there's more in the report. We just pulled a few interesting things per intersection to share in public meetings like this, but there's lots more. We can go to the next slide, Lori. So the future, what does the future look like? Well, we invite people. This is an invitation to get some common language. And we can start talking about intersections and we start knowing what that means now. Meet with partners and new networks of people that intersect with your work and how great that, like, I don't know if the foundation has ever come to St. Paul. So thank you for the invitation. This is a new network and partnership that we're forming. Share your lived experience and bring voice to the pursuit of well-being. The foundation, I'll show you the website in a second, but we actually have a place where you can submit a form and talk about your lived experience. Maybe you're a grandparent caring for your grandchildren and you're worried not only about your own maybe aging health, but you're worried about their childcare and their well-being. So like that's one example of an intersection story we'd love to hear about. And then if you can support through gifts or your time, your talent, give back to organizations that are working on issues that matter most to you in the region. It's going to take all of us, you know, whether you're volunteering an hour a month or you come to congregational celebration to show your social capital in that way, like all of that helps and will increase social well-being. And then the next slide is really our last slide, and this is a QR code that goes to the report. You can email us at intersections@nocofoundation.org. Or Holly, you're welcome to share my contact information. Email me and I'll get you connected. But really, this report is for the community. It's our gift to the community to take the data, take the stories, and do with it what you think needs to happen. We'll keep coming to meetings and sharing it. The one thing that the foundation has recently decided to do is we are going to map or put in a big spreadsheet, if you will, all of the different groups that are working on some of these things. So who's working on third grade literacy? Who's working on aging adults? Who's working on housing affordability? Mapping that out for Larimer and Weld counties, and then working with a consultant, identifying what moves the needle in each of those. What are some of the things that we can do in affordable housing to help it? What can we do with third grade literacy? What can we do for workforce development? And then we'll kind of go back and look at our list to be who's doing that. Who's doing it well? How do we get philanthropists, local government, businesses, nonprofits to do that work? And then if we're doing stuff that isn't moving the needle, let's stop doing that, right? Like we're always about let's add new things, let's do more, but like what can we stop doing too? So that will help us. And then lastly is if we have gaps, if no one's doing the work and we know through data this helps, let's figure that out too. So. Anyway, that's my presentation. That's the intersection report. I'd love to hear comments from you or any ahas that you had hearing things today. I know you guys are working on a special project. I know Holly's going to talk about this in a second, but I first got acquainted with this group because you have some funds that you're going to be distributing in the community. And you know, it's easy just to say, oh, well, let's just give it to our favorite nonprofit. But what you've done in this committee has done is some very hard work on being objective, looking at things with a critical and analysis eye for like, what is happening here? Who's doing it well? And how can your congregation partner, not just not a transaction, like write you a check, but have a relationship with the work that you want to invest in. I think that's beautiful and a wonderful model for the rest of the community. Oh, hi.
I have a question.
Sure, Terry.
I mean, there's so much you've covered. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
much. I mean, I can't imagine almost any other area that we've missed. But the environment, climate change are very important. And land use and all of those things are very important. Who is dealing with that?
Well,
how are you?
Right. So in our experience with the foundation, we work closely with the Coalition for the Poudre Watershed. We work closely with water providers. So every other month, I lead a group of 26 water providers: City of Loveland, City of Greeley, City of Fort Collins, Elko, Little Thompson, Big Thompson. All the water providers get together every month and they talk about water storage, water delivery, water supply. So there are groups working in that space as far as like forest and air quality. I know the city governments have departments and county. If Lori was here, I would have Lori talk about their climate smart future ready program that the county is doing. But yeah, I think it's going to take all of us, and local government is really doing a lot in this space.
And all of that's important, but
yeah,
what's happening is this development is driving out all sorts of animal life,
absolutely,
and nature.
Yes.
And it's so important for people to have a relationship with nature, because they've proven that if you go out and begin to care about an animal, learn about it and so on, you will have calmness within. It will help you psychologically. It will help in all sorts of ways. And it's of great concern to me that nature is allowed and indeed encouraged to have places they've lived in for years. And building housing has not helped. So to me, they're places for big conversations.
Yeah, it's a great
and a balance, a seesaw kind of thing. I'm wondering who is dealing with that.
Right. Yeah, I'm not the subject matter expert on that, but I know that there are groups like there's prairie dog coalitions, the city governments, when they put together their master plans, they always include buffers and need community involvement on understanding where should those be, how large should they be, what is the purpose. So yeah, I think that starting with our local governments and their planning departments might be a good place to start.
The connection between longer commutes also has to do with air quality.
Absolutely.
So everything
Yes.
is related.
So the MPO here, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, is looking at that very closely. Like what solutions do we have with mass transit, and also more on-demand transit? So maybe there's Max and there's Flex and there's the Greeley connection and Colt and Loveland. But what if there was like almost like a Uber for small groups of people that just need to get picked up by a small vehicle every once in a while, not fixed route all the time, wear and tear on the roads, but yeah, balancing air quality, road maintenance, where housing goes. Like you'll notice there's not a lot of affordable housing in Larimer County at large because they don't have the structure to put down roads for mass transit, or they don't have convenience centers that they can create that would serve the mass transit, that would serve the neighborhoods. Like most of that work is happening in more urban areas. And so when we look at our rural areas, we have to look at like people are moving to the rural areas now and there's not mass transit. So what infrastructure, what are the triggers and indicators that you could put mass transit out there? So I've just talked in a circle, but there's a very complicated issue.
And Larimer County is just in the process of doing a huge survey of transportation, looking at the at the rural, at the non-incorporated areas, and what do the roads look like and what do we do.
Great. Yeah.
So
didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Are they also looking at, I mean, a lot of businesses have moved to accepting remote workers.
Yeah.
And so the more that we can get businesses to be okay with that, we completely remove commuting from the formula of being an issue with air quality and people living far far from work. Obviously, there's some jobs you can't do remotely. I understand that, but there's a large portion of jobs that can be, and there's starting to be more resistance, it seems like, in some of the small business areas of, you must come to work.
I think
You
it
must
goes,
be here.
I think it goes to like the social part, right? Like the culture of an organization, like if the culture of an organization is healthy, the company actually does better. And so I think there's that push and pull. I know we're experiencing at the foundation too. Some of our workforce works remotely and many don't. And it's like, is it an equity issue? Is it a climate issue? Is it a culture issue? It's so complicated. So
It is.
yeah.
You saw the mental health issues.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a flip
There are.
side, there's a balance for everything.
Yeah.
There are, but there's probably also people who have been sort of locked out of the working world because they haven't been able to commute, or they haven't been able to be, there's not, facilities at an office that are conducive to them being able to work, but if they can work from their home, we've opened up doors to some people that haven't been able to work for years and years, and now they can too. So there's positives and negatives to both sides, but anyway.
Yeah, we did pull data on this point, but I think it's interesting how so many of the municipal organizations are getting into fiber and high-speed internet service as a utility, just like water and electricity is. And I think that data point is going to be interesting. How has access to more affordable high-speed internet affected remote and gig workers? Interesting stat.
It goes to childcare.
And goes back to childcare too. Yeah.
Because it makes, yeah.
You had a question in the back.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and all the intersections. It's a lot of food for thought.
Yeah.
Just curious if you work with Innosphere Ventures at all?
Yeah, very much so. Mike is actually quoted in the report. Mike Freeman, the director. So yeah, the Innosphere is a great place.
What is it?
It is a high-tech, high promise startup support system. Incubator. Yeah, incubates small businesses that are kind of on the high-tech track. So they go through.
Have you heard that term, incubator?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a great little local partner of mine.
What's the name of that?
The Innosphere Ventures.
Innosphere, yeah. They have
Been around a good 10 years.
Oh, 25. They just
Yeah.
celebrated,
Celebrated
Kathy, 25 years a year or
Mine-
two ago.
Kathy, somebody started, 100 years ago. when
Kathy
I worked
Kriegel.
Kathy Kriegel, yeah,
I
when I worked with
know.
the city, we did the whole like branding for it and did the
Uh-huh.
ribbon cutting for the building and then the grand opening. So, and then Mike was my boss at the city for a long time. So it's a really great organization, and they've come and talked to us about workforce stuff, and we're working closely with the Larimer County and Weld County workforce centers. We have quite a few workforce initiatives going on across county. It's really exciting work that be resulting in things soon. Yes, hi.
What is your greatest concern? The area.
I think housing. I'm worried people want to come here, and where are we going to put them? And we don't want to become like communities that are so exclusive because only the rich people can afford to live there. It worries me because it takes all kinds to make a community. So I worry about people being pushed out. That worries me a lot. And the river.
Yes.
The river worries me. Like I got give it love, conservation and resiliency. If the people that manage the Colorado River can't come to agreement by 2026, Washington D.C. may come in and decide where Colorado River goes. And we get Colorado River water every year through the CBT, the Colorado Big Thompson Project. And so it feels kind of like small, like we're small and we can't make a difference, but I think we can. I think there's groups out there like the Big Thompson Watershed Coalition, the Poudre River Coalition, this water alliance that I mentioned we convene. I think that will help. But those are some of my big worries. Yeah.
What drives the healthcare premiums? What's driving them up?
I don't know 100%. Do you know, Lyle? What drives healthcare premiums?
That's enough that I always.
I'm not an expert in
I
that.
can make up an answer.
Yeah, do you know?
I don't know, but it might just be supply and demand.
It might
Baby
be.
boomers are getting older and there's more people and less doctors living longer.
Healthcare is
Yeah.
costly.
Yeah.
And Affordable Care Acts too
I
coming.
believe it's the insurance companies taking all the money for their high paid employees.
Gotcha.
There's a point at which they have to return premiums though, if they have too much of a profit.
You know, but
They have to
ways
return
of
premiums
getting
to
around
people.
that.
Yeah.
everything is related because
It
it
is.
costs a lot to live here, then the nurse needs to be paid this much money, and that nurse needs to be paid by.
Insurance, yeah.
And
It
there's
is
nothing
so
not
complicated.
related.
No,
Yeah.
it's hard to have a simple life anymore in our world. It's very complicated.
Good question.
Yeah.
Was the businesses opening more like the outskirts from towns right outside, was there an opinion in from you on that, whether it's a good thing, or is that seen as like a problem?
Yeah, I don't know if I have an opinion on it. It's something that I've just heard about of late by some economic development folks, that that's a trend they're seeing in, when companies are expanding or coming here to start new offices, that's where they're looking to set up, not in the urban core so much. They're going to the suburbs because more people live there
Cheaper land.
and cheaper land. Yeah.
I just wonder if that would
Yeah.
potentially lessen the, like, housing demand.
Pressures.
Opportunities for people out there.
Maybe. Yeah, and then it gets complicated because in our urban cores, there's, codes around, you can have certain density in multifamily homes, but those aren't available in more suburban areas. They're changing. I know Berthoud has just changed their land use code to allow more density in multifamily homes and traditional single family lots, but again, so complicated. So thank you for the question.
When we Fort Collins just lost the law that we had passed, that I think the federal government overrode it or something, that U
The
plus
state
two.
government.
The state did? Okay.
It was in the first or second land use code and it got removed through citizen appeals, but then the state made it whole state thing, so it's gone anyway.
Is it gone or it's
gone.
It's gone.
finally
Now,
gone?
Yeah.
the U plus two is gone.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah. But then the complication of that is, will landlords be greedy and, increase rent knowing they have more people in there? I mean, who knows what will happen? Something to watch, I guess. But we're just, we're like you guys. We saw some pressures, we saw traffic, we saw there's a lot of things happening. Let's dive into the data, get a baseline, and do this every few years for a while, however long, and see if we can move the needle a little bit and make some things better. Because we already have a great thing going, but not everyone is thriving, and that's what we want to help with. Those that aren't thriving, how do we get them on a path to well-being? Yes.
Is there a place where we can read about your ethical human rights, like how you make your decisions about grant writing?
Grant making.
Yeah.
You know what? We don't do a lot of grant making ourselves. All of our donors make the grant funding. So our donors give out $11 million a year of their own money. It's not the foundation's money. We just steward it.
Oh, okay.
So we invested in the stock market, equities, other alternative markets like a bank, and then they make decisions where they want to put the money. And this report, though, is hopefully going to inform that. We're meeting with our donors every year, and we bring the report, and we're like, "Have you seen this? It would, can you see yourself supporting some of these higher needs to really help us move the needle?" So it's more relationship work for us. Yes.
I think I heard you say that you're gonna take some of the data and say what's working well.
Yeah.
When is that report or that secondary?
That I'm hoping the next 6 to 8 months. So we'll have kind of a not a summary, but a part 2, an addendum to the intersections report. Okay, now we've mapped who's doing the work. We have the data on what moves the needle, what things are doing those, and kind of a companion piece.
And will you come back again?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I just live down the road. Happy to. Yeah. Anything else?
If I may say something.
Yeah, sure.
How important is we do think regionally between the two counties, because it's 2 counties, 1 region, and that back and forth every day. United Way of Larimer County and Boys and Girls Club and Teaching Tree just established a little center down in Loveland. It's going to include childcare. I think it's 200 slots of childcare. And when as they're filling that up, they're realizing that a lot of children are from Weld County. So here you have United Way of Larimer County doing a lot of work, raising a lot of money, and they're serving children and families that are based in Weld County.
Yeah.
And so that's great. I mean, it's the reality. You can't just think about, we're going to give our money here, we're going to support our people, what have you. This is region, and were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, I toured it a few weeks ago. They're doing public tours of the youth campus every Thursday morning. I think you have to sign up, but either the Boys and Girls Club or Teaching Tree can get you in. But it's a wonderful example of, nonprofits coming together and saying, let's not work in silos. Let's work together. Let's have a place where families can drop off a baby to an 18-year-old at once and not drive all over town. So it helps with the environment, it helps with roads, it helps with family stress. But I was just gonna say, if you guys want to see it for yourself, you can.
And I toured it a couple of months ago. It's so impressive because they'll have support services for the family.
Yeah, that's right.
Above the
Yeah,
teaching
mental
and
health
stuff.
stuff.
It's just remarkable. It's just a great
Are any of these companies working on food waste?
There are nonprofits that work on food waste. There's restaurants that work on food waste. I don't have them at the top of my head, but I have definitely heard that. Like picking up food that is uneaten at hotels, for instance, and taking it to shelters or food pantries, grocery stores.
Yeah, I would like to know who does that.
Yeah,
I can't think of.
Vindicant Foods, is it Vindicant?
Vindicort?
Vindicort.
Yeah, they help with the meals we deliver.
Yep.
during COVID.
They do a lot of that work.
And then I was also gonna say about, we have plenty of resources in Weldon and Larimer counties. Between the two counties, it's a gross domestic product every year of about $40 billion.
Wow, I did not know that. Yeah.
And there's plenty of resources, but what people don't know is the challenges we face. And then also to, give people practical handles on how we can address those challenges. And one big thing that I'm just, is preoccupying me lately is social isolation. And how this is what we need is to get re-engaged in our communities. One of the stats, I love to have little stats. It's a terrible stat, but it's one of the stats. It's social isolation is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Like the health equivalent. And that's from the Surgeon General, the U.S. Surgeon General. That's one of the stats in the recent report. So here's this opportunity, plenty of resources. We need social engagement. We need to be involved in our communities. Our communities have challenges. And then for the congregation, I'm married to Felicia, and she's a great preacher. I don't love that image, the good shepherd, that means there's little sheep. But we're for our neighbors. That's part of what we are as a community, as a church. And this is just knowing what our neighbors need. In many ways, what we need. And how do we, we're already doing that, even by having this presentation. So how do we listen to that and then respond in generosity and also to mobilize our neighbors to serve our neighbors?
Thank you. That's probably a good segue into an update on the outreach action team. Thank you, Lyle. So I want to introduce the team. I don't know if you even know who's on it, but Kyle Lyle's on it, and Terry Birdsong, Phyllis Jakowski, and Lyle, of course, and then Jim Pasula, who I don't think is joining us today. He's still in the Virgin Islands, so he'll be back next month. But we have been meeting a lot and researching a lot, and I've been breathing and thinking this for the past 3 months, and I think the rest of the committee has. And we came up with criteria. We came down with 12 organizations that we would research more, and some of us visited those organizations and have been involved with them. And we finally determined 5 to move forward for this generous grant of $40,000 that is coming from our investment income. It represents less than 1%. About 1%. And we hope that this will make a difference and that we'll be able to know our neighbors better. And I guess I'll announce the 5 organizations. One is Foco Cafe, which I'm sure some of you have been to. One is, and that's helping social isolation and the food insecure for sure. Safeway, Crossroads Safe House, and the program they want to fund is youth that are youth of the abused parents and how we can maybe break the cycle of domestic abuse. Family Housing Network, which we are all familiar with, and they want to use the money to hire a bilingual navigator to help some of the immigration community here. Matthew's House, which is also growing and has a day shelter in Fort Collins for youth, mainly unhoused youth. And also they're building an overnight shelter in one of the Loveland schools. Yeah,
I toured that too.
overnight.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't toured that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that. And I'm leaving one out.
Dementia Together.
Yeah, Dementia Together, which is an organization that serves 3,000 people. And it's to help the caregivers and also those with Alzheimer's or dementia socially engage. So those are the 5. It was a very, very difficult decision. But can I mention what we asked and the Vestry approved is that we're going to make smaller donations to all 12 because they all are doing wonderful work. And this was Lyle's idea. He said, I wish we could. We said, well, why not ask the Vestry? So, and now I don't know if I can come up with all the names.
Why don't we list them?
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll list them, yeah. 2 are like Teaching Tree and La Familia, and I said Homeward Alliance, yeah, and,
Grand Family Coalition.
Right,
Talking about
right.
grand-
right. So, stay tuned.
And
Yeah.
what's the next step?
The next step is for all of you to choose one. So we're kind of handing it over to you, but we're gonna give you lots of information. Printed, we have summaries of the 5 organizations, their mission, they have a vision statement, how exactly they're going to use the money. And we're going to have you vote online and a paper ballot for those who don't want to do the online. And I hope to have some announcements at service every week so we can kind of update you on the process and give you more information. I'm really excited about this. And, you know, we heard so much, and I was on the Vestry last year, you know, when we did the cottage meetings, how we need to reach out to the community and help those that need our help. And the other thing that's important is that we've asked them, how are they going to engage all of us after they get the money? So there'll be lots of volunteer opportunities and reporting back to the congregation.
And I want to thank Holly and all the members of this team that have given many, many hours over the last.
Before Memorial, until Monday, Labor kind of. So you'll be getting a lot of information, but please vote. And we're gonna do ranked voting. I think Google provides that. So you can choose your first, second, and third choice. So I think that will be more inclusive. Because I'll tell you, it's hard to choose. They're all doing great work. And there's so many of them. It was so difficult to narrow it down to 12, let alone 5. So, yeah.
Any questions about the outreach action team and their work?
I just want to say there was, you know, the team was so brilliant at the implementation of what we as a community and the industry asked of them, which was really to bring together as much information as possible so that we made a really informed decision. And that could have been done in a real half-assed way, and it was not. It was done in an incredibly thorough way that really gives us like the opportunity to have a voice as a, you know, as a congregation. So I really appreciate all that work.
Absolutely.
Great process.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Claire.
And I have to say, Claire, overview of the needs, and then I met with her a couple of times, and she suggested, let's present this report to the community, and I know it was pretty beneficial. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Happy to. All right, awesome.
I need to connect
That concludes the situation. Okay.